Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this lesson. Now today we'll be going through a question 1 type question, and now this is the way that question 1s are asked in grade 11, all type of question 1s from the first term till the end. Even in metric question papers, all question 1s are like this, just the level of difficulty and the marks allocated differs. So if you'll be able to answer this type of questions from now on, meaning that when you get to metric level you won't struggle with the question 1 question. Now for question 1s, you are mostly asked to solve for x and solve for x and y simultaneously. These square type of questions will always be there on your question papers, and this is the easiest part of your question paper, is the easiest section. So if you'll be able to master this and get all these marks, get the maximum marks, so that you should be able to balance, even though you won't get maximum marks in the other questions. So it's best that you master these easiest questions, so that the hardest question you should try your level best and try to get at least half of those other questions that remain. Let us consider the following equation. This is our first equation. We're told to solve for x. Now this is the easiest ones that you will see in your question 1 question. This question is allocated 2 marks. Now whenever you're given 2 brackets and they're equated to 0, the first thing you should know is that both of these brackets are equals to 0. So you should equate each of them to 0. So we'll have x minus 2 is equals to 0, or x plus 7 is equals to 0. So from there you transpose the negative 2, x is equals to positive 2, or x is equals to negative 7. Now for both these x values you'll be given 2 marks. Okay, 1.1.2, so we're given this equation. Now we are told correct to 2 decimal places. Whenever you're told correct to 2 decimal places, you should be aware that you're going to use the quadratic formula to answer this question. Now to use the quadratic formula, you need to have a value that is classified as a value classified as b, and c. Now a have to be the coefficient of the exponent of 2, b have to be the coefficient of the exponent of 1, and c have to be a constant. Now you can see in this equation we do not have any of those, so we're going to expand this equation first and try to get those values, which is a, b, and c. So x multiplied by 5x, we're going to have 5x squared. X multiplied by negative 3, we're going to have negative 3x. Now you transpose the positive 1, it becomes negative 1, which is equated to 0. Now you can see that we can say 5 is the value of a, negative 3 is the value of b, and negative 1 is the value of c. Now you can use the quadratic formula to get the positive and negative value of x. Now the quadratic formula says negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now there's no need for you to cram this quadratic formula as it is provided on your formula sheet. Now the thing that you're going to do is just substitute in with the values that we have classified as a, b, and c. So we know that b is negative 3, so we'll have negative, you use the bracket, negative b, so it's negative 3 plus or minus square root of negative 3 inside the bracket to the exponent of 2 minus by 4. Now a, we know that it's 5, and c, we know that it's negative 1. Close that bracket, over 2a, it's still 5. Now the thing that you do is put this in your calculator and you'll get your positive value of x and your negative value of x. Then you put the or. So the positive value of x is 0.84. You round it off to 2 decimal places, and the negative value of x is negative 0.24. 1.1.3, we're given this inequality. So if we're given an inequality and it's factorizable, the first thing that you want to do is factorize this inequality. So you open 2 brackets for factorizing. This is x, this is x. Now for these 2 numbers, you look for 2 values, but when you multiply them they give you 6, and when you add or subtract them they give you a 1, which is the coefficient of x. Now you need to make sure that you get a negative 6 and a negative 1. Now 2 multiplied by 3 is 6 and 3 minus by 2 is 1. The 6 is negative, meaning that one of the numbers needs to be negative and the other one needs to be positive. But the biggest number always take the sign in the middle, and the bigger number between 3 and 2 is 3. So here we'll have negative 3, then this side will have positive 2. You can try to reverse this and it will give you this very same inequality we're given. We've successfully factorized the inequality. Now the thing that you want to do is change this inequality sign into an equal sign, so that from there you're able to look for the critical values. Now you will say critical values, either you write it in full or you just write CV, then you write the very same thing which you had on the previous step. Now instead of this sign you'll write equals to 0. Now when you get to this point, you'll do the very same thing that we did on 1.1.1. Each and every bracket will be equated to 0. Now x minus by 3 is equals to 0, or x plus 2 is equals to 0. Now x is equals to 3, or x is equals to negative 2. Now we've gotten these critical values, but we haven't found a solution. Now we go back to the initial equation which we had. You write it down, which is x squared minus by x minus by 6. It's less than 0. Now because this was an inequality, it means that you're supposed to draw a graph of the critical values that you have gotten in your answers. So, and the graph, it's either going to be concave up or a concave down. Now that is decided by the value of x squared. Now the value of x squared is positive, so if it's positive then it's going to be a concave up. So you draw your graph. We know negative 2 comes before 3, so negative 2 will be on the left hand side and positive 3 will be on the right hand side. Then you draw your graph concave up. Now for all of the values that are greater than negative 2, this graph is negative. As you can see, it falls under this line. And remember, on your Cartesian plane, there's the y-axis is drawn here, right? But it's just that in this question we are not supposed to draw the y-axis. Now all of these y values are positive and all of these y values are negative. So you can see the graph from the time it reaches negative 2 and going downwards, all of these values are negative. And from the time it reaches positive 3 and going upwards, all of these values are positive. Now in our initial equation, we were told that every value on the left hand side is supposed to be less than 0. So our final answer is going to be, you put the x in between the negative 2 and the positive 3. Now remember, for every value that is greater than negative 2, the graph is negative. So we're going to say x is greater than negative 2. Now for every value that is less than positive 3, the graph is also negative. But x have to be less than positive 3. Now this is your final answer of this question. Now you can try to substitute any value between negative 2 and positive 3, and I promise you your answer will be less than 0. So you can try to substitute. We know that here there's negative 1, we know here it's 0, positive 1 and positive 2. So you can try to substitute between these four values and your answer should be equals to less than 0, which is going to be a negative number. But you're not supposed to substitute it with negative 2 or positive 2, because we're not told that it is equals to negative 2. We're not told it is equals to positive 3. 1.1.4, we are given an exponential equation. Now we're still solving for x. So the first thing that we are going to do here is dissect this exponential expression expressed in a binomial. So we'll use the first law of exponent, which says when you multiply the same bases, you add the exponent. Meaning that when you can multiply 2x and the 2 to the power 1, you'll get 2x plus 1. So that's how you're going to dissect it. So we still have 2x plus 2x multiplied by 2 to the power 1, which is equals to 48. Now whenever you have an exponential expression in this form, so we're only paying attention to the left hand side. That's why I'm calling it an expression. Now I'm not paying attention to the equal sign. So since there's an addition, or if there's a subtraction sign, we're gonna factorize this expression. You cannot go on from there if you're not factorizing it. So we have a common factor of 2x. So we'll write that 2x outside of the brackets and open the bracket. Then we'll write whatever number that is left, which is 2 to the power 1. Now you cannot just factorize one number like that. So remember, 2 to the power x multiplied by 1 is also 2 to the power x. 2 to the power x multiplied by 2 to the power 1 is 2 to the power x plus 1. So whatever that of factorizing has to take us back to the initial expression that we had. So this is a plus. You take whatever sign that was there, which is an addition sign. If it was a subtraction, then you're going to take the subtraction sign. So you write plus 1, you close that bracket, and it is equals to 48. Now we'll have 2x multiplied by, I'm replacing this bracket with the multiplication sign. Now 2 to the power 1 plus 1 is equals to 3, which is equals to 48. Now we're solving for x, so we do not want any number that is in front of the x value. We want to take it to the next side or transpose it to the next side. Now to take out this positive 3, since it was multiplying, the easiest way to remove it is by dividing. Use the inverse opposite. So we're going to divide by 3 and we'll divide by 3. Now on the left hand side we have 2x, which is equals to 48 divided by 3 is 16. Now when you get to this point, you want to express 16 in its exponential way. So 16 is equals to shift fact, you'll get 2 to the power 4. Now 2x is equals to 2 to the power 4. Now 16 is the same as 2 to the power 4. Now if you get the same basis and both those bases have the same value, in this case it's a 2, they will cancel out. Now you'll only be left with the exponent. So we're left with x is equals to 4, and that's the final answer. 1.1.5, we're given a Sadic equation. Now whenever you have a Sadic equation, you want to remain with a SAD on one side and numbers without a SAD on the other side. So here we're going to transpose the positive 2. That's the very first step that we do. So on the left hand side we remain with 2x minus by 1, which is equated to x minus by 2. Now this is what we now have. Now you want to make sure that you do not have a side on both of the sides. So you are going to square both sides, and that's the simplest way to remove a side in an equation. So you square both sides. Now this square will cancel out this side. Now on the left hand side you are left with 2x minus by 1, which is equals to. Now this exponent of 2, it means that there is 2 of these brackets. Now then you have this step, so you're going to expand this bracket. But because you are in grade 11, this step is not really important. You're not supposed to show it. They just expect that as soon as you see this, you write the simplified form of this. But for better understanding, I'll just write both of these brackets and then multiply them. So on the left hand side we have 2x minus by 1. Now x multiplied by x, it's x squared. X multiplied by negative 2, it's negative 2x. Negative 2 multiplied by x, negative 2x again. This multiplied by this, it's positive 4. Now you group the like terms. This side we still have x minus by 1, which is equals to x squared minus by 4x plus 4. So because you're in the grade 11 level, as soon as you get to this step, you don't want to see this step. This is the following step. I just did this for better understanding. Now you want to take everything on one side so that on the other side you should remain with a 0. So we're going to transpose this side to that side. So we'll have positive x squared minus 4x plus 4 minus 2x plus 1 is equals to 0. So one side is equated to 0 as we have removed all of the values that are there. Now you group the like terms. So we have x squared, negative 4x, negative 6x, it's negative 4x, negative 2x, it's negative 6x, positive 4, positive 1, it's positive 5, which is equals to 0. Now from here you're going to factorize to get your critical values. That's the only way you can get the x values here. So you open two brackets, okay. This is x, that's x, equals to 0. Now again, you'll look for two numbers. When you multiply them, they give you positive 5, and when you add or subtract them, they give you a negative 6. Now because here there's a positive and here there's a negative, it means that both of these values are going to be negative, as negative multiplied by negative is positive, and negative minus negative is also negative. So the two values, it's 5 and 1, so we're going to have negative 5 and negative 1. Now you can try to multiply this and it will take you back to this equation. Now we have x minus 5 is equals to 0, or x minus 1 is equals to 0. Now x is equals to 5, or x is equals to positive 1. Okay, so for our last question, we're giving a solve for x and y simultaneously for 6 marks. I think this is where people should be getting their marks from, because this question is basically the easiest question there, and it's allocated a lot of marks. So you'll always be provided with two equations, one in a simple form, which is linear, and the other one will be provided in a quadratic form, which is exponent of 2. Now, you will group these equations and say which one is equation 1 and which one is equation 2. I always like to say the simplest one will be equation 1. So you'll say equation 1, and the more complex one will be equation 2. Now you're going to create equation 3 out of these equations between this first and second equation. Now there's no way that you go ahead and make equation 3 out of this quadratic equation, or else you'll be confused with what you need to do from there. So you always make your third equation out of your first and simplest equation. Now I'll make my third equation out of my first equation. Now we'll have x, you transpose the 6, is equals to 2y minus by 6. Now whenever making a third equation, on the left hand side, you need to remain with a variable by itself, so that you should know the value of x is equals to what. Now you're going to substitute this third equation, I will name this the third equation, into the second equation. You cannot go ahead and substitute it with the first equation, as this third equation was created out of the first equation. So you'll write 3 into 2, showing that you substitute it into 2. Now you'll write down the second equation, which says x squared plus 2xy is equals to 3y squared. Now wherever you see the value of x, you will use the third equation to replace that value of x, since you already know what x is equals to. So here there's an x, so instead of x, you will now say 2y minus by 6 close bracket to the exponent of 2 plus 2, open another bracket, 2y minus by 6. Now this y will be here with the 2, close this bracket, is equals to 3y squared. Now from here, all you're going to do is multiply with brackets. So you multiply all the values that are inside a bracket with those that are outside. Or if there's a bracket expressed in the form of an exponent, you're going to expand it. So here we have an exponent of 2, showing that these brackets have to be expanded. Now this expansion, it's not necessary for grade 11s, but I'll do it either ways. Plus, so we'll multiply here. 2y multiplied by 2y will have 4y squared. 2y multiplied by negative 6 will have negative 12y, which is equated to 3y squared. Now the very next step, I'm going to multiply with brackets. So 2y multiplied by 2y, it's 4y squared. 2y multiplied by negative 6, negative 12y, negative 6 multiplied by 2y, negative 12y again, and this multiplied by this, it's positive 36, which is added to 4y squared minus 12y, which is all equated to 3y squared. Now you're going to group all the like terms and transpose the 3y squared to the left hand side, so that on the other side we're left with a 0. So first, let us group every term that is on the left hand side. So 4y squared plus 4y squared, it's 8y squared. Negative 12, and negative 12. This will give us a negative 36y. Positive 36, it's all alone, so we still have positive 36. Now this will be transposed, so we'll have negative 3y squared, which is equals to 0. Now you group the 3y squared with the 8y squared. Now 8y squared minus by 3y squared, it's 5y squared. So we'll have 5y squared minus by 36y plus 36, which is equals to 0. Now from here, you're going to factorize and get your critical values. So you open two brackets. Now because here there's a 5, one of the y's will contain a 5 and the other y's won't contain a 5. So here we'll have 5y, and also here we'll have a y. Now looking for two values. When you multiply them, they give us positive 36 when we add or subtract them, they give us negative 36y. Now because of this 5y, so the negative 36 will be able to be made, even though those two values, when you really add or subtract them, they don't give you 36. So the value that you need to focus on here is positive 36. So you're going to look for two values. When you multiply those two values, they give a positive 36. So 6 multiplied by 6 is positive 36. Now, since the sign in the middle is negative, so we'll use 2 negative 6. So if you can put a negative 6 and a negative 6, which is obviously equated to 0. Now, if you have time, on a spare paper, you should try and multiply with brackets and see if this factorized equation will take us back to our initial equation. Okay, so we'll equate everything to 0. So 5y minus by 6 is equals to 0, or y minus by 6 is equals to 0. Now 5y is equals to positive 6, or y is equals to positive 6. Now we are done with getting that y value. Now we'll divide by the coefficient of y, which is 5. This side 5. Now y is equals to 6 over 5. Now since we have gotten the value of y, now we'll be able to get the value of x. Now remember the third equation that we created. This is what is going to help us get the value of y so easily. So we're going to say x is equals to 2. Now we know the value of y, so we'll use the value of y, but we'll use both of these values because we are required to get two values of x as we have gotten two values of y. Minus by 6, or x is equals to 2 inside the bracket 6 minus by 6. Now from here, either you just multiply using your brain, or you can just press this into the calculator. I'll just go to the final answer. Now x is equals to negative 3,6, or x is equals to 6, and then you get your full 6 marks.